I stood in front of the mirror, my hands trembling as I adjusted the neckline of my dress. My engagement party with Ryan was about to begin, and the weight of the evening pressed heavily on me. I had come a long way from being a waitress at a small cafe in Denver, supporting myself while studying criminal justice, to standing here, about to become part of the Harper family, a family I knew would never fully accept me. Ryan came into the room, his warm smile putting me at ease, if only for a moment. "You look incredible," he said, his eyes full of love. "Thank you," I whispered, trying to ignore the tight knot of nerves in my stomach. "I just hope tonight goes well." He wrapped an arm around me, his touch a comfort I desperately needed. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he promised. The party was in full swing, the laughter and chatter of guests filling the grand hall. But I could feel Eleanor Harper's gaze on me, sharp and cold. Ryan's mother had made her feelings about me clear from the start. I was nothing more than a waitress, someone who would never be good enough for her son. My heart raced as she stepped forward, clinking her glass loudly to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor began, her voice saccharine but laced with venom, "I'd like to say a few words about my son's unique choice for a fiancé." I felt my face flush, but I stood as tall as I could, refusing to show weakness. Eleanor's eyes zeroed in on me, narrowing. "Ryan, how could you even think of marrying someone like her?" she spat. "A waitress? What kind of future could she possibly provide for you?" Gasps rippled through the crowd, and humiliation burned my cheeks. I tried to keep my voice steady. "With all due respect, Eleanor, I'm not ashamed of my background. I worked hard to put myself through school, and I'm studying criminal justice." She cut me off, her voice rising in fury. "Oh, spare me the sob story. Do you really think your so-called ambitions make you worthy of this family? You will always be beneath us." Before I could respond, she slapped me across the face, the force of it ringing through the hall. I stumbled back, shock coursing through me, but she wasn't finished. She grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked me forward, pain shooting through my scalp. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Then, in a final act of humiliation, she grabbed a glass of red wine from a nearby table and threw it in my face. The liquid splashed over my dress, soaking it and leaving me drenched. The room was silent, and all I could hear were the gasps and murmurs of the guests. Ryan rushed to my side, his voice full of anger. "Mother, stop," he shouted, pulling her away from me. "You have no right to treat her like this." Eleanor glared at me one last time before storming off, and I stood there, drenched and humiliated, but something inside me hardened. This wasn't over. I would prove to her, and to everyone, that I was so much more than she thought. The moment Eleanor stormed out of the room, the whispers around us grew louder, but I barely registered them. My cheeks still burned from the slap, and the pain from where she had yanked my hair throbbed. I wanted to cry, to run and hide from the humiliation, but I forced myself to stay strong. I wasn't going to let her win, not like this. Ryan pulled me into his arms, his voice filled with a mix of guilt and anger. "Lauren, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his grip on me tightening. "I never imagined she'd do something so horrible." I pulled back, meeting his worried eyes. "It's not your fault," I said, my voice steady, even though I felt anything but. "But I can't just let this go. Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone, and I'm not going to let her think she can get away with it." He searched my face, worry etched into every line of his features. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I took a deep breath, determination building inside me like a fire. "I'm going to fight back," I replied. "She thinks she can break me, but I'm stronger than she knows. I'll show her that I'm not someone to be pushed around." The next day, I reached out to Marcus Reed, an old friend from my criminal justice program. We met at a small, quiet cafe in Denver, and the moment he saw me, his eyes widened in shock. The bruise on my cheek had darkened overnight, a stark reminder of Eleanor's cruelty. "Lauren, what happened?" Marcus asked, his voice full of concern as he took a seat across from me. I told him everything about the engagement party, Eleanor's attack, and my resolve to fight back. His jaw tightened as he listened, anger flashing in his eyes. "That's outrageous," he said. "No one should have to go through something like that. What can I do to help?" I leaned forward, the fire in my chest growing. The Harper family's wealth and influence are built on something suspicious, I'm sure of it. I've heard rumors about shady deals and financial misconduct. I need your help to find solid evidence and expose them. Marcus's expression turned serious. "You know this won't be easy," he said. "The Harpers have power, and they'll do whatever it takes to protect their reputation. But if anyone can take them on, it's you." A determined smile crept across my face. "Then let's get started," I said, feeling the weight of my decision settle over me. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I wasn't going to let fear stop me. Marcus and I dove into the investigation with a sense of urgency. Each evening, after finishing my classes and work shifts, I met up with him in his small but organized office. We pored over public records, financial statements, and any documents we could find that might expose the Harper family's secrets. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became. Harper Global Investments was hiding something. One evening, Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched across his face, but his eyes gleamed with determination. "Lauren, take a look at this," he said, pointing to his computer screen. "These offshore accounts and discrepancies in their tax filings. This isn't just negligence, it's deliberate fraud." I leaned over, my heart pounding as I scanned the evidence. "This is it," I whispered, feeling a thrill of both fear and excitement. "This is what we need to expose them." Marcus rubbed his temples. "It's a start, but we have to be careful," he cautioned. "The Harpers have the money and power to make our lives miserable if they find out what we're doing." I sat back, feeling the weight of his words. He was right. The Harper family wasn't to be underestimated. But I was tired of living in fear, tired of feeling powerless. "We need to be strategic," I said. "We'll keep digging and make sure we have airtight evidence before we make a move." As the days passed, the pressure grew more intense. The deeper we got into the Harpers' financial dealings, the more anxious I became. One night, as I left Marcus's office and headed to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The street was eerily quiet, and the shadows seemed to press in closer. I quickened my pace, clutching my bag tightly, and breathed a sigh of relief when I finally slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors. When I got home, Ryan was waiting for me, his worry evident in the way he paced back and forth. "Lauren, you're scaring me," he said as soon as I walked through the door. "You've been getting these anonymous threats, and now you're investigating my family. What if they come after you?" I placed my hands on his shoulders, trying to calm both of us. "I know it's dangerous," I admitted, "but I can't let Eleanor win. She thinks she can control everything and everyone. I need to prove that she's not above the law." Ryan's eyes softened, but his concern didn't fade. "Just promise me you'll be careful," he pleaded. "I don't want to lose you." I hugged him tightly, drawing strength from his warmth. "I promise," I said, though I knew that the fight was just beginning. Eleanor and Gregory Harper weren't going to go down easily, and I had to be prepared for whatever they threw at me. The closer Marcus and I got to the truth, the more dangerous things became. We had discovered a mountain of evidence linking Harper Global Investments to offshore accounts and tax fraud. But as we dug deeper, the threats started to escalate. One evening, I found an anonymous note slipped under my apartment door. "Stop investigating, or you'll regret it." My hands trembled as I read it, but I refused to let fear take over. Instead, I pressed on, more determined than ever. Marcus and I knew we needed help, so we reached out to Rachel Myers, a well-known investigative journalist with a reputation for uncovering corruption. If anyone could bring this story to the public, it was her. We met Rachel at a quiet cafe downtown. She was sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, listening intently as we laid out our evidence: financial records, offshore account transactions, and testimony from former employees. All of it was damning. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her expression serious. "This is huge," she said. "But you need to know that once this goes public, the Harpers won't hold back. They'll come after you with everything they've got." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. I thought back to Eleanor's slap, to the humiliation and pain I'd endured, and to the threats that had tried to silence me. "I'm ready," I said firmly. "They've taken enough from me. It's time to stand up for myself." Rachel's eyes softened, a hint of admiration shining through. "All right," she said. "I'll start verifying everything and prepare the report. But be careful, you're poking a hornet's nest." The days leading up to the exposé were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Marcus and I double-checked every piece of evidence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. One evening, I spotted a black SUV parked near my building, its engine idling. My heart raced, but when I tried to approach, the car sped off into the night. When I got home, Ryan was waiting, his worry palpable. "Lauren, this is getting out of hand," he said, his voice strained. "What if something happens to you?" I squeezed his hand, trying to reassure him even though my own fear simmered beneath the surface. "I'm scared too," I admitted, "but I can't let them intimidate me. If I back down now, they'll think they can keep hurting people and getting away with it." He pulled me into his arms, his embrace warm and protective. "Just promise me you'll come home safe," he whispered. I closed my eyes, feeling the pressure of everything weighing on me. "I promise," I whispered back, even though I knew that promise was becoming harder to keep. The night before the exposé was set to air, Marcus and I met with Rachel one last time. We sat in her office, the evidence laid out like a battlefield map. The tension in the room was thick, but we all knew what was at stake. "Are we ready?" Rachel asked, her voice steady. I nodded, my resolve hardening. "Yes," I said. "Let's do this." The next day felt like the longest day of my life. As the clock ticked toward the evening news broadcast, my nerves were stretched thin. Rachel Myers had done an incredible job putting the exposé together, but the anticipation of the Harper family's reaction was almost too much to bear. Ryan sat beside me in our living room, holding my hand tightly. Marcus was there too, pacing back and forth. We all jumped when the broadcast began. Rachel appeared on the screen, poised and professional, ready to reveal the truth. "Tonight, we bring you an exclusive investigation into Harper Global Investments," Rachel announced. "What appears to be a successful and reputable firm hides a web of corruption, including tax fraud, illegal offshore accounts, and financial deception." My heart raced as the evidence played out in front of millions of viewers. Rachel presented the financial records Marcus and I had gathered, the offshore account trails, and testimony from former employees who had witnessed the Harper family's shady dealings. Each piece of evidence hit harder than the last, and I could almost hear Eleanor Harper's fury echoing in my mind. When the segment ended, I sat back, letting out a shaky breath. Marcus stopped pacing and broke into a relieved smile. "We did it," he said, his voice full of awe. "The truth is out there." Ryan turned to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of pride and worry. "You were incredible," he whispered, "but I know this is just the beginning." He was right. Within hours, the backlash began. The Harpers released a public statement, calling the exposé an outrageous and baseless attack on their family. They claimed I was a bitter woman trying to ruin their reputation, and they announced a defamation lawsuit against me, demanding massive damages. Marcus clenched his fists when he heard the news. "They're trying to bury you," he said, anger flashing in his eyes. But we knew they'd fight back. I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of resolve. "They can try," I said, "but we have the truth on our side." The next few days were a whirlwind of legal papers and media attention. The Harpers' lawyers were ruthless, painting me as a liar and trying to discredit my investigation. But I refused to let them intimidate me. I had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to give up now. One evening, as I prepared for the first court hearing, Ryan wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I leaned into his embrace, drawing strength from his warmth. "I'm scared," I admitted, "but I have to see this through." He kissed the top of my head. "We'll get through this together," he said, his voice steady. The first day in court was intense. The Harpers' lawyers threw everything they had at me, but Marcus and I presented our evidence confidently, standing our ground. Kevin Ross, the former employee who had given us critical information, took the stand and testified about the Harpers' illegal activities. His voice shook, but his words were powerful. As I watched him speak, a spark of hope ignited in my chest. This fight wasn't just for me. It was for everyone the Harpers had hurt with their lies and greed. I knew we had a long road ahead, but I was ready for whatever came next. The court case was grueling, and every day felt like a battle. The Harpers' lawyers were relentless, dissecting every piece of evidence we presented and attacking my credibility with every chance they got. But I refused to let them shake me. I had come too far to back down now. Marcus was a rock by my side, guiding me through the legal minefield. He prepped witnesses, reviewed documents, and stood with me in court every day. Ryan was there too, never missing a hearing, his presence a constant reminder of why I was fighting so hard. The public had started to rally behind me, and knowing that people believed in my fight gave me strength. One of the most pivotal moments came when Kevin Ross, the former employee of Harper Global Investments, took the stand again. His testimony was crucial, and I held my breath as he spoke, recounting the shady dealings he had witnessed. "I stayed silent for a long time," Kevin said, his voice quivering slightly, "because I was afraid. But seeing Lauren stand up to them gave me the courage to finally tell the truth. The Harpers have been breaking the law for years." The courtroom was silent, every word hanging heavy in the air. The judge took everything in, and I could see the impact Kevin's words had. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could win this. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed me, shouting questions and jostling for a statement. I held my head high and spoke with as much conviction as I could muster. "This has never been about revenge," I told them. "It's about accountability and standing up for what's right. The truth matters, and I won't let powerful people silence me." Back at home, Ryan wrapped his arms around me as we sat on the couch, exhaustion finally catching up to me. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "No matter what happens, you've already won by standing up for yourself." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I fought them back. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "I couldn't have done any of this without you and Marcus. I just want this nightmare to be over." Ryan kissed my forehead, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel safe. But I knew the battle wasn't over yet. The Harpers still had resources, connections, and the means to fight back with everything they had. Finally, the day of the closing arguments arrived. I sat in court, my heart pounding as our lawyer laid out the case one last time. Marcus squeezed my hand, and I felt a surge of gratitude for everything he had done. We had presented our evidence, and now it was in the judge's hands. After hours of tense waiting, the judge returned with a verdict. My heart pounded as he announced that the defamation case against me was dismissed. The evidence of the Harper family's wrongdoing was compelling enough to launch a criminal investigation into their business practices. Eleanor and Gregory Harper sat in shock as the courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge ordered them to face criminal charges for tax fraud and financial misconduct. My breath caught in my throat, and tears streamed down my face. We had done it. We had won. Ryan pulled me into a tight hug, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Lauren," he said. "You stood up to them and won." Marcus grinned, clapping me on the back. "You're incredible," he said. "This is a victory for everyone who's ever felt powerless." Relief washed over me, and I finally allowed myself to believe that the worst was over. The Harper's empire was crumbling, and justice was finally being served. The relief that washed over me was indescribable. The nightmare I had lived through for weeks had finally come to an end, and I had won. The Harper family, who had once seemed untouchable, were now facing the consequences of their actions. Eleanor and Gregory were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, their once proud faces now filled with shock and disbelief. It was a sight I would never forget. As we stepped out of the courthouse, the sunlight felt brighter and the air felt lighter. A crowd of supporters cheered and clapped, and I was overwhelmed by the warmth of their encouragement. Marcus and I shared a triumphant smile, and Ryan held my hand tightly, his pride in me evident in his eyes. That evening, we gathered at a small celebration with our closest friends and allies. We toasted to victory and resilience, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of peace. Marcus raised his glass and looked at me with admiration. "To Lauren," he said, his voice full of emotion. "A warrior who never gave up, even when the odds were against her. We're all so proud of you." I felt tears prick my eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "But I couldn't have done it alone. You all stood by me when I needed you most." This fight was about more than just me. It was about proving that the truth matters and that no one should ever feel powerless. Ryan squeezed my hand and kissed my temple. "You've inspired so many people," he whispered. "You've shown everyone that standing up for what's right really does make a difference." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The story of the Harper family's downfall spread, and I found myself becoming an unexpected symbol of strength and courage. But the best part was knowing that the people I loved were safe, and that I had reclaimed my life on my own terms. I graduated with honors from my criminal justice program, and opportunities began to open up for me. I decided to use my experiences to help others, becoming an advocate for people who had faced injustice. It felt like the perfect way to give back and to make sure that no one else had to endure what I had. On the morning of my graduation ceremony, I stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd of fellow graduates and their families. As I began my speech, I felt a wave of gratitude and determination. My journey has taught me that our worth is not determined by our background or the opinions of others, I said. It's defined by our courage, our integrity, and our willingness to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. The applause was thunderous, and I knew in that moment that I was exactly where I was meant to be. That evening, Ryan, Marcus, and I stood by the waterfront, the same place where Ryan had proposed. The moonlight reflected off the water, and we laughed and reminisced about everything we had been through. Marcus raised another toast, this time with a mischievous grin. "To new beginnings," he said. I clinked my glass with theirs, my heart full of hope and love. "To never backing down," I added, my eyes shining, "and to standing up for what's right." Ryan looked at me, his eyes filled with adoration. "This is just the beginning, Lauren," he said. I smiled, knowing he was right. The fight had been long and hard, but I had come out stronger, more determined, and more sure of who I was. With Ryan and my friends by my side, I was ready for whatever the future held. I had proven that even the most powerful adversaries couldn't silence the truth, and I knew that my story was far from over. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world, and I'd love to hear your thoughts or any ideas you have for future stories. So go ahead, make it your own, and become part of our storytelling adventure. See you next time.